saga nearly 10 years in the making, witnessed by millions of players around the globe, Destiny has become one of the most robust franchises in gaming. Despite its age, the series has gone from strength to strength, having reached a global age of popularity these last few years. It's a world that's been a labour of love for its creators Bungie, and whilst Destiny is one of the biggest names in gaming, there are indications that it may be entering its twilight years. But why would the developers who have struck gold and have a huge player base regularly playing the game even think about sunsetting the beloved title? Well, it wouldn't be the first time they've done something like this. This is the studio that took the gaming world by storm with Halo, before walking away from the franchise. With talks of a new IP, concluding storylines, and the final few expansions of the live service title circulating online, it's time to ask the important question: is this the beginning of the end for Destiny? With Destiny 2 Lightfall on the horizon and another expansion planned for 2024, it seems a strange time to ask this question. Destiny has the momentum of a runaway freight train. It's one of the most popular games in the world. However, as much as players may want the ride to never end, at some point it's going to slow down and stop. Bungie has been in the game for a long time, over 30 years. During their tenure, they've created cult favourites, fleshed out franchises, and gave Microsoft a fighting chance in the console war. Their Xbox was to compete with the likes of Nintendo and Sony, and without Halo shifting millions of copies of their hardware, who's to say if they would have succeeded? Halo was a killer app. Bungie were already seasoned devs, so its quality and success was no freak occurrence. The success of the game led to a sequel, which led to a franchise, one of the most critically acclaimed ones in the gaming industry. Bungie cultivated, fleshed out, and continued to work hard on the IP. But 9 years after Combat Evolved landed on the original Xbox, they released Halo Reach and bid farewell to their own franchise. Halo would continue to grow, and a decade on since Bungie left Master Chief and company to fend for themselves, the IP is still going strong. Not just with games, but comics, books, films, and TV series having all spawned their own creation. Bungie had been invaluable to Microsoft, but they wanted more for themselves. They wanted to move onwards into the industry and track a new path, unbound and independent. That new path, as we well know, became Destiny. Halo was trailblazing, but Destiny was even more ambitious. The notion of an always online MMO on our home consoles doesn't seem too far-fetched today, but it was an alien concept back then. One that many were quick to dismiss. It doesn't seem strange now because Destiny pioneered and near perfected the concept. Whilst live service games are a common sight now, Destiny was on the forefront. It helped its audience see that this new form of gaming content delivery was much more exciting than the traditional release structure, the one that Bungie had been locked in with during their Halo years. Destiny was Bungie's way to break the mould that they'd found themselves in, and the actions that followed were nothing short of trailblazing. But here we are, almost 10 years since the franchise first landed, and the rest of the industry has caught up. Live service games, always online multiplayer experiences, console MMOs, they're all the norm now. As features of the game became replicated elsewhere, Bungie would look to alter their approach. Over the years, they've responded to player desires, changed their content delivery style, introduced a seasonal approach, bolted old content, and consistently tinkered with the game experience to make something that feels living and breathing. They want the game to be exciting for their legions of players, yet entice newcomers at the same time. It's not something that came easily. Remember, Destiny 1 came and went before its sequel became the game we know and love today. But over the years, the experience has been fine-tuned, and once everything just worked, Bungie could dive headfirst to work on what has elevated Destiny these past few years: its story. The Witch Queen expansion especially saw a step up in complex and elaborate storytelling, something clearly now on the forefront of Bungie's vision for the franchise. But all good stories have to come to an end, and the developers are planning for their conclusion. The Witch Queen storyline was drastic, but it also set its own endpoint, and the next expansions will accelerate towards the end.
We're building not so much to an ending, but more to this transformative moment for Destiny 2's future.
Last year, we announced The Witch Queen and the following expansion, Lightfall.
And now we're excited to announce the release after Lightfall, the final chapter in the Light and Darkness saga, Destiny 2, the final shape. It's going to be one wild, continuous ride.
Bungie has been clear about one thing. 2024's expansion, currently titled The Final Shape, will be a conclusive and important release, marking the end of the Light and Dark saga and changing Destiny as we know it. We can only guess at what the change is, but we have enough information to make a few educated guesses. As we've seen with Halo, it wouldn't be unheard of for Bungie to walk away from Destiny, even at the height of its popularity. But fans of the game should take solace in that it's very unlikely, even if it's happened before. There are a few things to consider when thinking about the future of Destiny. One unavoidable detail is that the current game is starting to show its age. Yes, it's receiving new coats of paint and regular content updates to keep it feeling fresh, but Destiny 2 is over half a decade old. The original Destiny made it 3 years before it needed upgrading, and the issues of its age are becoming apparent more and more with players. With each update, issues arise, bugs surface, and frustrations are starting to boil over. Not to mention that the game just can't keep endlessly growing. Sacrifices have to be made and aspects have to be trimmed back by Bungie, or else the game will become a sprawling, complicated mess. By the time the final shape rolls around, the game will be in its 7th year. Areas, features and aspects are having to be vaulted already, keeping the game contained, but by then it'll be bursting at the seams. The cleanest option for Bungie would be a fresh slate, a sequel. Now that would make perfect sense, but there are a few other details to consider, mainly that Bungie has been expanding rapidly. They've partnered with NetEase and have been acquired by Sony. They've received a huge cash influx that they are using to increase their office space and hire more developers. Clearly, they must be gearing up towards Destiny 3, right? Well, not necessarily. A lot of these events are heavily tied together with what's next for the developer, a new game, not Destiny, but something entirely different altogether. It's called Matter. Just before you jump into any false hope of Matter being in some way connected to or being a spiritual successor to Destiny, it's not. It's a new universe with new characters in a new genre, something well away and removed from Destiny entirely. So what do we know about Matter? Well, unfortunately not a whole lot, but enough to give us some indication as to where Bungie are heading next. So Matter is a long way from the gritty, emotional story-driven focus of Destiny. It's intended to be a more light-hearted, vibrant and colourful game. A cast of whimsical characters will take centre stage in a brand new setting. The final details though, we can only make a rough assumption on. Bungie have partnered with NetEase, known for more jovial live service games, as well as mobile games too. Now, this doesn't mean that Matter will be a mobile game, but it's worth considering. Moreover, NetEase has a huge presence in China and Japan, two huge gaming markets which Bungie could be looking to break into. That means a different style and game approach that might feel a bit alien to Western players. Furthermore, Bungie has been hiring a whole host of varied new staff, from level designers to esports veterans, and this could mean that their new game comes with an esports angle attached to it. Take vibrant characters, an effervescent approach, multiplayer action, and combine them all together, and it sounds a bit like Overwatch, doesn't it? Not saying this is a sure bet, but one thing's for sure, it's certainly not very similar to Destiny in the slightest. And from that, it sounds a bit like we're back in the final days of Bungie manning the helm of Halo. One project ends and another starts up. But then again, Halo didn't end. They stepped away knowing it would be handed over to 343 Industries. So even if Destiny were to stop being the company's main focus, it seems unlikely that it would be dead and buried. It's like their child, maybe even more so than Halo was. They've built up and cultivated the franchise for a decade, and I just don't think they'd call it quits. They officially came under the Sony umbrella last year, and it doesn't make sense for it to be part of a lucrative acquisition like that and then start to slow down. It seems more likely that the opposite effect is going to happen. Sony has a lot of resources, not just in games, they have a multimedia empire. The transformative change coming to Destiny will play into this acquisition. Destiny may be reaching the twilight of its life as just a game, but it's clear that there's more that Bungie wants to do with it, and more the fans want to see. Their focus on narrative with the Light and Dark saga will come to an end, but what comes after that? I don't think that's the end, not by a long shot. I think that opens the door for all sorts of transmedia and new projects using the resources and tutelage that Sony has. Given the growth of Bungie over the last few years, the cash injection from the acquisition and from NetEase, the developers are in a better place than ever. They've expanded their physical office space, hired scores of new talent, and whilst one big franchise may have been all they could handle in the past, these new resources could mean something else entirely in the future. This could be a transformation from a big developer to a monolithic one, something on par with Activision Blizzard. One company with several huge IPs, spin-off content, different live service products, all coming from under one roof. So is the end coming for Destiny 2? In a way, it could be. Maybe ending is the wrong way to look at it. I think it's probably better that we think of it as chapters. When the Lightfall expansion and then the final Shape expansion have come and concluded, it will mark the end of something. But there is almost certainly a continuation waiting in the wings to pick up. We know for certain there's another game coming from Bungie, but I think we can all safely assume that it will run side by side with the future of Destiny, rather than instead of it. Bungie has poured their heart into the franchise for a decade, after stepping away from a different multi-billion-dollar franchise. Given the quality jump in the past few years, it's clear they're still in it 100%, maybe even more so than when they first started. They've set up the immediate course for the story and the series, and the excitement and commitment on display is a sure indicator that they want that momentum to keep pressing forwards. From where they're concerned, there's a whole lot more to do in the Destiny universe, but that anticipation just doesn't feel like they're going to keep on as they are. There seems to be something big on the horizon. It seems like Destiny isn't going to slow down to a complete stop, but switch into a next gear. Initially, they wanted to make their dream game, and the one that they saw as their future, and they've done that, stood by it, and continued to deliver year after year. They know what they're capable of, and maybe now they're ready to do even more with the series. One chapter of Destiny will close, but the next one may just be more than fans could ever have expected from the game.